Ian Troop. I'm a competitive angler, guide, and a fly fishing instructor. I'm going to tell you my go-to dry fly when guiding anytime I need an emerger. It's called the Hare's Ear Pearl Emerger. So I'm going to tell you one of my go-to, for sure, guiding patterns, just one of my go-to fishing patterns. I don't have a great name for this. Call it a pearl hare's ear ribbed emerger or a clink hammer emerger, something like that. Fantastic fly, works really well on all the local rivers, but it travels really well with me as well in competitions. So the hook I really like for this pattern is the 390 BL clink hammer, 14s and 16s. Again, you can tie it smaller. I just tend to probably drop the rib when I tie it smaller, but this is just deadly in a 14 and a 16. Thread, I'm using black thread. Olive thread works just as well. You're not going to see the thread too much, so when sweat it, just make sure it's thin. So we're going to go wrap the whole way down the bend of the hook. And I find on this clink hammer hooks, adjust your vise till you have the kind of the hook eye kind of flat at the top. You might have to mess around with it a little bit, but we're, for just to show you how far down the bend, we want to go almost as far as you feel comfortable, right till it's starting to bend right around. So think about it. We're going to build a wing here. We want a body hanging down. It's an emerger pattern, and it's a good base for using other things. You can use a thread body with this. You can use all kinds of stuff with it. It's just a really simple emerger type fly. This particular version works really well for me. So what I'm going to do is take really thin pearl mylar. This is size 16. Just make sure it is thin. We don't want to go overboard on this one. So catch it in. And again, we're going to run right back down that thread base as far as we feel comfortable, which is about there. Any farther and you find your thread starts falling off, you've gone too far. Now we're going to use one of my favorite dubbings, so hare's ear number 1. I do like this dubbing for this one, particularly because it has antron in it. Not that other dubbings wouldn't work, I just like the fact that it has a little bit of antron in it, especially with the dry fly. It catches just a little bit different, the light, and with the pearl it gives me confidence, but I'm sure it'd work with many other dubbings. We're going to tie this one pretty tight, so don't go crazy. Very sparse amount of dubbing. Keep the body thin. It's a dry fly. We want it to hang down. So I tend to, you can see, do a very thin dubbing on that. So, now we're going to just come up from the bend, and so just touching turns. And the black thread, like again, you can use olive just as well, but again, touching turns being the key. We're looking for a hare's ear body. Now what you want to do is you don't want to come right up to the hook eye. What we're going to do is put an overwing on this one, but you're going to come pretty close. So just there, if you have a little excess, you can build up a little bit of a taper. And that would be about as much as I would taper. You can see a slight taper, but don't go crazy with it. Otherwise, just pull the dubbing off. So now we're going to rib. And so just your regular spacing. Don't lose any sleep over it. This is one durability aspect of this fly is the ribbing, so make sure you've kind of got it in there pretty tight. I like to have a little biting into the dubbing, protects it a little bit. I do find I still catch fish when the dubbings are gnarled out, but you will find you may lose the mylar a little bit. Cut away any flyaways here. So there we go. That's our base. So now one thing I recommend is a really good high quality CDC. So make sure it's one material that if you don't have high quality, it's very frustrating. It does not work very well because your flies will sink. So this is a 14. I like to use 2 pieces. What I'm going to do is use some 2 pieces, lay them on top of each other. We're going to use kind of the top end of it like that. And so what I've done is I've stroked it up here like this. Grab as many fibers as you can. We're going to have this little poof. And so the poof is don't go long on this fly. Don't go too short, but just at the bend of the hook. So I'm just running it straight up. And if anything, I would skew on the shorter side. We just don't want this big long overwing. So catch that in, tie it down. Yeah, just about like that. So this is why I use 2, because you think that body's gonna hang down. The hook isn't, it's a dry fly hook, but it's got some mass to it. As you get into the smaller sizes, just a little poof. And if you can think, if we're tying a really small fly, just with a thread body, you're just running the thread up and putting a little poof CDC, and it is a fantastic midge pattern. So one thing I like to do with this is just pull this back, put a couple underneath, and then go back. That's just because sometimes it slips out when I'm cutting it. Angle your scissors, boom. If you've found you crowd the head a little bit, you can just push it back. And I'll show you another trick here, something called a thread zap it. It's for beaters. I don't know, they burn their thread or something. If you're tying with CDC and you need to get rid of anything, you just get one of these and burn it off and try not to knock your thread off. So if you ever have to clear the eye, just a handy tool. So, hey, I could tie off and be done, no problem, but some, you know, if you're like me, sometimes it's hard to find your dry fly on the water. Little trick you can put is a cider on top. So I'm using Glo Brite number 5, you could use Glo Brite number 4, you could use any type of floss that has a color you like. Glo Brite number 5 tends to show up pretty good in many lights, so what I'm gonna do is just take a chunk of this. So I'm just very badly taking a chunk of that. Take a Glo Brite. I would just fold it once. You could fold it more than once if you want. You don't really need to. So 2 ways you can do it. You can catch it underneath and kind of just do this and push it on top of the thread, or you could just run your thread on top. But the easier way is just to catch it like that. And you can see I've just caught it under the thread and it's going to build the head up a little bit. Again, that's why you need thin thread. And so, you know, cut it as high as you want. I wouldn't go crazy. So what you don't want to do is, the fish is not supposed to see this. If you have really picky fish, you might have to trim it down, but I tend to make mine pretty small, something like that, as you can see. If you look, you can't see it from underneath. That's enough for me to see it. Nice little orange dot on the water. And as you can see, very, very simple fly. This fly works really well for me. It will pull fish up for it. You know, is it a caddis? Is it a mayfly emerger? All of the above. My favorite kind of fly. Fills in a lot of holes that the trout just decide what to do with. Now, you can tie it off with however you want. I tend to just do a couple of half hitches on this one, mainly because I have glued it. So a little bit of glue. Not going anywhere. There you have it. Clink hammer emerger. A lot of variations, but this is my go-to. And I use it throughout the season as soon as fish start coming up for dries.